Commander Sarah Chen pressed her face against the reinforced glass of NORAD's observation deck, watching as streaks of orange and gold painted themselves across the heavens. But these weren't meteors. The radar screens behind her screamed with contacts, thousands of them, descending through Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation. "Ma'am, we're getting readings unlike anything we've ever seen," called out Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez from his station. His voice cracked despite his years of training. "The energy signatures, they're off the charts." Sarah turned away from the window, her jaw set in grim determination. At 42, she had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, the one every military officer secretly hoped would never come. First contact, and it wasn't going well. "How many?" she asked, striding across the command center's polished floor. "Initial count puts it at 12,000 vessels, ranging from what appear to be fighters to something." Rodriguez paused, double-checking his readings. "Something the size of Manhattan, ma'am." The largest screen at the front of the room flickered to life, displaying a three-dimensional map of Earth's orbital space. Red dots swarmed like angry hornets, their trajectories calculated and purposeful. No random exploration here. This was an invasion force. Time to ground impact. Sarah's voice remained steady, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the command chair. "At current descent rate, approximately 6 hours, ma'am." 6 hours. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her daughter Emma, safe in her college dorm room 3 states away. "Safe for now. Get me the president on secure line 1, she ordered, "and patch me through to all global defense networks. If we're going down, we're not going down alone." As Rodriguez worked frantically at his console, Sarah caught sight of something that made her blood run cold. The largest vessel, the Manhattan-sized behemoth, had begun to slow its descent. It hung in the upper atmosphere like a dark storm cloud, casting shadows across 3 states. Then the communications array crackled to life. The voice that emerged was unmistakably alien, melodic yet cold, speaking perfect English with an accent that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Inhabitants of the 3rd planet," the voice announced, filling every speaker in the command center. "You have been selected for absorption into the hegemony. Resistance is futile. Surrender is mandatory. You have 1 rotation of your planet to comply." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Sarah stared at the screen showing the alien fleet's position. 1 day. They were giving humanity 1 day to surrender everything they had ever built, ever fought for, ever dreamed of. "Ma'am?" Rodriguez's voice was barely a whisper. "What are our orders?" Sarah Chen had spent 20 years climbing the ranks of the military, had survived 3 wars and countless peacekeeping missions. She had seen humanity at its worst and at its best. But she had never seen anything like the determination that now filled her voice. "Lieutenant," she said, her words carrying across the silent command center, "get me Dr. Elena Vasquez at the Phoenix Labs. Tell her Project Lazarus just went from theoretical to operational." Rodriguez's eyes widened. Every officer with Sarah's clearance level knew about Project Lazarus, the black project that pushed the boundaries of physics so far that most scientists called it impossible. The project that had been deemed too dangerous to ever activate. "Ma'am, are you sure?" The risk assessment indicated. "The risk assessment didn't account for alien invasion, Lieutenant." Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. "And it certainly didn't account for what happens when you corner a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war." As Rodriguez reached for his communication panel, Sarah turned back to the window. The alien ships continued their leisurely descent, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had probably conquered 100 worlds this way. Arrive with impossible numbers, demand surrender, absorb another civilization into their empire. But they had never encountered humans before. "This is Commander Chen to all stations," she announced, her voice broadcasting to military installations across the globe. "Operation Endgame is now in effect. All units, prepare for Implementation 7. Implementation 7. The code that every military officer hoped they would never hear." The code that meant humanity was about to reveal what they had been hiding in underground laboratories and classified facilities for the past 30 years. The code that meant the aliens were about to learn why humans were the only species in the galaxy that had weaponized curiosity itself. As the alien fleet descended like harbingers of doom, Sarah Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Chapter 2. The Hidden Arsenal. 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before a machine that shouldn't exist. The temporal displacement engine stretched across a chamber the size of a football stadium, its crystalline core pulsing with energy that made the air itself sing. Elena had spent 15 years of her life building this impossible device, working from theories that most physicists dismissed as fantasy. Her hands shook as she input the AW activation sequence. Not from fear. Elena Vasquez had stopped feeling fear the day she realized what she was capable of creating, but from anticipation. "Dr. Vasquez," came Commander Chen's voice through the secure comm link. "Status report." "The engine is coming online now," Elena replied, her British accent sharpened by concentration. "Temporal field generators are at 60% capacity and climbing. We should have full operational status within the hour." "And the targeting system?" Elena's fingers danced across the holographic interface. "That's where it gets interesting, Commander. We don't need to target the ships themselves. We target the moment they decided to come here." Silence on the comm link. Elena had learned to expect that reaction when she explained how the engine worked. Time manipulation had a way of breaking people's brains. "Explain," Chen's voice came back, tight with focus. "Think of causality as a river, Commander. Events flow from past to future in what appears to be a straight line. But if you have enough power, and I mean truly staggering amounts of power, you can create eddies in that river, reverse currents, places where cause and effect begin to negotiate." Elena walked to the chamber's observation window, looking down at the engine's core. The crystalline structure rotated slowly, each facet containing energies harvested from the quantum foam itself. It was beautiful and terrifying, humanity's greatest achievement and potentially its final mistake. The alien fleet made the decision to attack Earth at some point in their past. That decision created what we call a causal anchor, a fixed point that all subsequent events flow from. If we can reach back along their timeline and eliminate that anchor, the invasion never happens, Chen finished. They never decide to come here in the first place. Precisely. The beauty of temporal displacement is that it doesn't just prevent something from happening, it makes it so that it never could have happened. From their perspective, they'll simply find themselves with no memory of Earth, no reason to come here, no evidence we even exist. Elena paused, running her hand along the control panel. "Of course there are risks." "What kind of risks?" "The kind where we might accidentally erase ourselves from existence if we're not careful. Or worse, create a temporal paradox that unravels causality across the local galactic cluster." Elena's voice carried the casual tone of someone discussing weather patterns. "But given that the alternative is extinction, I'd say the risk-benefit analysis is rather favorable." Another pause from Commander Chen. Elena could almost hear the woman's mind processing the implications. "How long until the engine is ready?" 4 hours, assuming no complications. "The aliens gave us 24 hours to surrender. That's plenty of time." Elena smiled, though no one could see it. "Commander, you're thinking too small. We don't need 24 hours. We have all the time in the universe." Meanwhile, in the skies above major population centers worldwide, the alien fleet had begun to show itself properly. The smaller vessels, each still larger than a city block, descended through the clouds like metallic angels of death. They took positions over New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, and Beijing, their presence impossible to ignore or deny. In Times Square, millions of people craned their necks upward, smartphones recording humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. The ships hung motionless, their dark hulls reflecting the city lights below like mirrors of doom. But in the Pentagon's deepest levels, generals and admirals were already implementing protocols that had been decades in the making. Protocols based on one simple assumption: that humanity's first contact with aliens would not be friendly. All Phantom projects are now active, announced General Patricia Hawthorne to the assembled Joint Chiefs. I want every classified weapon system we've developed since 1947 brought online. Everything. Ma'am, interrupted Colonel James Park, some of those systems have never been tested. The quantum disruption arrays, the gravitic resonance cannons. Colonel, we are 6 hours away from being absorbed into an alien empire. This is not the time for safety protocols. General Hawthorne's steely gaze swept across the room. Activate everything. If it can kill, maim, or inconvenience an alien spacecraft, I want it powered up and ready to fire. What the aliens floating serenely above Earth cities didn't know was that they had just declared war on a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of creative destruction. A species that had looked at every law of physics and asked not, what does this tell us about the universe? But how can we weaponize this? The same curiosity that had put humans on the moon had also led them to split atoms, bend space-time, and tunnel through dimensions. And now, with their backs against the wall, humanity was about to reveal what they had been building in secret for the past 3 decades. The aliens thought they were conquering primitives with barely functional spacecraft. They were about to learn what happened when you threatened a species that had turned warfare into an art form. Chapter 3. The Revelation. The hegemony's Fleet Admiral Zorthak stood on the bridge of the command dreadnought Inevitable, watching the primitive world turn slowly beneath him. In his 600 years of service to the hegemony, he had overseen the absorption of 47 worlds. This one would be 48. The process was always the same. Arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate superiority, offer absorption into the hegemony as the only alternative to extinction. Most species took less than a day to surrender. The smart ones took less than an hour. Admiral called his sensor officer, a reptilian being from the 3rd planet they had absorbed. I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface. Zorthak's 4 eyes narrowed. Define unusual. High-energy particle emissions from multiple underground facilities. The signatures are inconsistent with their apparent technological level. Show me. The main display shifted to show Earth's surface, with energy signatures highlighted in pulsing red. There were dozens of them scattered across every continent. Each one radiated more power than should have been possible for a species that had barely managed to leave their own planet. Recommendations? Zorthak asked his tactical officer. The energy levels suggest they may possess weapons capable of damaging our smaller vessels. Perhaps we should accelerate the absorption timeline. Zorthak considered this. In 4 centuries of conquest, only 3 species had possessed weapons capable of threatening hegemony ships. All 3 had been eliminated rather than absorbed. Their potential for resistance too great to risk. Begin active scanning of their military installations, he ordered. I want to know what they're hiding. What the deep scans revealed made Zorthak's blood run cold. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice cracked with disbelief. The humans appear to have developed functional temporal manipulation technology. Impossible. Sir, the energy patterns are unmistakable. They've built what appears to be a large-scale temporal displacement engine, and they're powering it up. Zorthak had been born on a world that had been erased by temporal weapons during the Great War between the hegemony and the Threnody Empire. He had lived through the terrifying experience of watching his childhood memories change in real time. As the past was rewritten, it was not something he ever wanted to experience again. How long until their device is operational? Based on the power curve, approximately 2 hours. 2 hours. Enough time to glass the planet from orbit if necessary, but not enough time for a proper absorption. And temporal weapons changed everything. If the humans could actually manipulate time, they might be able to prevent the hegemony from ever finding their world. Open a channel to all ships, Zorthak commanded. Prepare for immediate orbital bombardment. Target all energy sources. But, as he spoke, his communications officer looked up with confusion. Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from the planet. They're requesting to speak with our commanding officer. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was calm, confident, and utterly unafraid. It belonged to a human female speaking in the clear tones of someone accustomed to command. Hegemony vessel, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We need to talk. Zorthak almost laughed. In 600 years, no primitive species had ever requested negotiations after seeing a hegemony fleet. They begged, they pleaded, they offered tribute, but they never spoke as equals. Human, you will surrender unconditionally, or we will reduce your planet to ash. I don't think so, came the reply. You see, we've been watching your empire for longer than you think. We know about the 17 worlds you've destroyed when they refused absorption. We know about your war with the Threnodi, and we know about your species' particular fear of temporal weapons. Zorthak's four eyes widened. How could these primitives know about classified hegemony history? You're bluffing. Am I? Fleet Admiral Zorthak, born on Kepler 442b before it was erased by Threnodi temporal mines in the year you calculate as 2847. Survivor of the Battle of the Void Gates. The only hegemony officer to have lived through a temporal attack and maintained coherent memories. The bridge fell silent. That information was classified beyond the highest levels of hegemony command. No one outside the War Council should know those details. How? Zorthak whispered. Because, Admiral, you're not our first contact with your empire. You're our last. The communications channel filled with the sound of power systems coming online. Not just one or two, but hundreds of them, scattered across the planet below. You see, Commander Chen continued, about 30 years ago, we received a visitor, a refugee from one of your conquered worlds, a being who warned us that the hegemony was coming, and who taught us everything we needed to know about your weapons, your tactics, and your weaknesses. Impossible. No one escapes hegemony absorption. Tell that to Dr. Yilnoth of the Centauri Science Collective. I believe you destroyed his homeworld about 40 years ago. He's been living quietly in our Amazon rainforest ever since, helping us prepare for this day. Zorthak's blood turned to ice. Dr. Yilnoth had been the most brilliant scientist of the Centauri species, and his escape during the absorption had been one of the greatest failures in hegemony history. If he had been sharing hegemony secrets with the humans. The temporal displacement engine is just the beginning, Chen's voice continued. We've had 3 decades to prepare for your arrival, 3 decades to study your technology, understand your tactics, and develop countermeasures. The tactical display around Zorthak's bridge began lighting up with new contacts. Not ships, but weapons. Weapons hidden in asteroids, weapons disguised as space debris, weapons that had been slowly moving into position around his fleet for the past several hours. How many of our worlds have you been watching? He asked, though he dreaded the answer. All of them, Admiral. Every world in your empire, every military installation, every shipyard. We've been preparing for this war since before your current emperor was born. The censor officer looked up with panic in his voice. Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy buildups from the hidden weapon platforms. They're targeting our entire fleet. Shields to maximum, all ships prepare for combat. But Commander Chen's voice cut through the bridge chatter with the calm assurance of someone holding all the cards. Admiral, I'm going to give you the same choice you've given 47 other species. You have 1 hour to withdraw from our solar system and never return. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why humans are the only species in the galaxy that considers mutually assured destruction a viable military doctrine. The channel closed, leaving Zorthak staring at a tactical display that showed his mighty fleet, surrounded by weapons he hadn't even known existed. For the first time in 600 years of conquest, Fleet Admiral Zorthak began to understand what it felt like to be prey. Chapter 4. The demonstration. Dr. Elena Vasquez's fingers moved across the temporal displacement controls with the precision of a concert pianist. Around her, the massive chamber thrummed with power that made the air itself glow. Temporal field at 95%, she announced into her comm unit. Beginning causal anchor identification. 3 miles above, Commander Chen watched the alien fleet through NORAD's observation deck. The massive ships hung motionless in Earth's atmosphere, their commanders no doubt trying to process the impossible situation they found themselves in. Dr. Vasquez, Chen's voice crackled through the comm. How much of their timeline can you access? That's the beautiful part about temporal displacement, Commander. Once we lock onto their causal signature, we can trace it back as far as we want. Their decision to attack Earth, their invasion of other worlds, even the founding of their empire, it's all connected by causality threads that we can follow and modify. Elena paused her work to study the readings flowing across her screens. The alien fleet's temporal signature was surprisingly complex, woven through centuries of conquest and expansion. I'm seeing something interesting, she continued. Their empire isn't as stable as they want us to believe. Multiple conquered species, dozens of worlds held together by force rather than loyalty. If I were to make the right adjustments to their timeline. What kind of adjustments? Elena smiled. What if their empire never existed? What if, instead of becoming conquerors, they had remained on their homeworld, never developing interstellar travel? Can you do that? Commander, I can. Rewrite their entire history if necessary. The question is, how merciful do we want to be? Before Chen could answer, Lieutenant Rodriguez called out from his station. Ma'am, we're receiving another transmission from the alien fleet. Put it through. Fleet Admiral Zorthak's voice filled the command center, but now it carried a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. Commander Chen, we are prepared to negotiate terms for withdrawal. Chen exchanged glances with her officers. In less than 6 hours, they had gone from facing extinction to having the most powerful military force in the galaxy asking for terms. Mbui, listening, Admiral. The hegemony is willing to classify your solar system as restricted space. We will not return. Not good enough. Chen's voice was steel. We know about the 47 worlds you've conquered. We know about the billions of beings living under hegemony oppression. Your withdrawal from our system doesn't solve the real problem. Silence from the alien fleet. What are you proposing? Zorthak finally asked. Chen looked down at the readout from Dr. Vasquez's laboratory. The temporal displacement engine was now at full power, reality itself bending around the massive device 3 miles below her feet. Dr. Vasquez, she said into her comm, show them what we're capable of. Elena's hands moved across the controls with practiced ease. Targeting the hegemony forward scout that surveyed our system 2 years ago. Temporal displacement in 3, 2, 1. The effect was instantaneous and terrifying. On every screen monitoring the alien fleet, one of the smaller vessels simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, erased. As if it had never been built, never launched, never arrived at Earth. But the truly horrifying part came when the fleet's communications channel crackled to life with dozens of alien voices speaking, in panicked confusion. Where is the severing wind? The severing wind was never part of this fleet. I remember giving orders to Captain Yilthin yesterday. There is no Captain Yilthin. There never has been. Check the fleet records. The records show we departed with 11,999 vessels. We have always had 11,999 vessels. Commander Chen listened to the growing panic in the alien voices as the crews struggled to reconcile their memories with a reality that had been quietly rewritten. Half of them remembered the erased ship and crew. The other half lived in a timeline where those beings had never existed. That, Chen announced over the communications channel, was a demonstration. We removed one ship from your timeline, made it so that vessel was never constructed, its crew never born, its mission never planned. From the perspective of half your fleet, it never existed. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Now, imagine what happens when we apply the same technique to your entire empire. The communications channel filled with whispered conversations in a dozen alien languages, as the reality of their situation became clear. Humanity didn't just have weapons that could destroy them. They had weapons that could make it so they had never existed in the first place. Commander, came Zorthak's voice, now heavy with what might have been respect. What are your terms? Chen looked at the readings from hidden observation posts scattered across the galaxy. Posts that had been watching hegemony worlds for decades, documenting the suffering of conquered peoples, cataloging the crimes of an empire built on forced absorption. Unconditional liberation of all conquered worlds, she said. Reparations for the species you've displaced, and complete withdrawal of hegemony forces to your original homeworld. Impossible. The logistics alone, Admiral, Chen interrupted. Let me be very clear about something. We can erase your empire from history with the push of a button. We can make it so the hegemony never existed, your homeworld never developed spaceflight, your species never left its solar system. She paused, looking out at the massive alien fleet that had come to conquer Earth and now hung helplessly in the sky. But we're offering you something better. We're offering you the chance to be remembered as the empire that chose to end oppression, rather than the empire that was simply erased from existence. Your choice, Admiral. The silence stretched for long minutes. Elena's voice came through the comm from the laboratory below. Commander, I'm detecting massive power buildups from their fleet. I think they're preparing to attack. Chen smiled grimly. Dr. Vasquez, please prepare for full timeline displacement. Target, the decision to form the hegemony empire, approximately 800 years ago. Understood. Beginning causal trace now. Over the communications channel, they could hear frantic conversations among the alien fleet commanders. The temporal displacement engine's power signature was impossible to miss. They knew exactly what was about to happen to them. Wait, came Zorthak's voice cutting through the chatter. Commander Chen, we accept your terms. All of them. Yes. Liberation of conquered worlds, reparations, withdrawal to our homeworld. But we ask for time to implement these changes. The logistics of dismantling an empire. You have 1 standard year, Chen replied. Our monitoring stations will track your progress. Any deviation from the agreed timeline, any evidence of continued oppression, and we activate the temporal displacement engine. Understood. As the alien fleet began its withdrawal from Earth's atmosphere, Chen turned to Lieutenant Rodriguez. Send a message to all human governments. Tell them Phase 1 is complete. Phase 1, ma'am? Chen looked back at the departing alien ships, thinking about the dozens of other species in the galaxy that might be facing similar threats from other empires they didn't yet know about. Lieutenant, we've just proven that humanity can rewrite history itself. Do you really think we're going to stop with one empire? Rodriguez's eyes widened as he began to understand the implications. How many other species out there are waiting for liberation? How many other empires need to be convinced to change their ways? Chen's smile was sharp. We've got a temporal displacement engine, 3 decades of preparation, and a species that's never been good at leaving well enough alone. She walked back to the observation window, watching the last of the alien ships disappear into the darkness of space. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Lieutenant, please prepare a list of every aggressive spacefaring civilization within 50 light-years of Earth. We have some house calls to make. Epilogue. The New Guardians. 6 months later. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in her new laboratory, aboard the UES Temporal Guardian, humanity's first time-capable starship. Through the vessel's observation deck, she could see the liberated world of Centauri Prime, its cities rebuilding after decades of hegemony occupation. The past 6 months had been busy ones. The hegemony had kept their word, beginning the process of liberation and withdrawal. But as their empire crumbled, other threats had emerged. Warlords seeking to fill the power vacuum, slave-trading cartels, and at least 3 other aggressive empires that had been waiting for the hegemony to weaken. Humanity had dealt with each threat in turn, sometimes through negotiation, sometimes through demonstration, and twice through complete temporal erasure when diplomacy failed. The galaxy was slowly learning a new truth. Earth's children did not tolerate oppression. Dr. Vasquez, came Commander Chen's voice over the ship's intercom. We're receiving a distress call from the Vagan system. Sounds like another slaving operation. Elena's fingers moved across the temporal displacement controls. After 6 months of practice, she could rewrite small sections of history as easily as editing a document. "Any particular preferences for how we handle this one?" she asked. "Surprise me," Chen replied. "Just make sure they learn the lesson." Elena smiled as she began tracing the causal threads that had led to slavery in the Vegan system. Perhaps the slave traders would find themselves with no memory of how to operate their ships. Or maybe they would wake up tomorrow with an inexplicable desire to become humanitarian aid workers. The beautiful thing about temporal displacement was that the possibilities were endless. Outside the observation deck, the stars beckoned. Thousands of worlds, millions of species, countless opportunities to make the galaxy a better place. And at the center of it all, a small blue planet whose children had looked at the impossible and asked not, "Can it be done?" but, "How can we do it better?" The universe had been ruled by the strong for billions of years. That era was ending. The age of the curious had begun. In a small cafe in Geneva, two beings sat across from each other at a corner table. One was human, a young woman with bright eyes and an infectious smile. The other was unmistakably alien with blue-tinted skin and 6 arms, but wore clothes that could have come from any Earth shopping mall. "So," the human said, sipping her coffee, "how are you adjusting to life on Earth?" The alien, former fleet, Admiral Zorthak, carefully lifted his own cup with 2 of his 6 hands. "It is different than I expected," he admitted. "Your species' educational programs are quite thorough, and the integration assistance has been more generous than I deserved." The human, Dr. Sarah Kim, recently graduated from the University of Chicago with a degree in xenological studies, leaned forward with interest. "What do you think you'll do now that your rehabilitation program is complete?" Zorthak was quiet, for a moment, watching the bustling street outside where humans and aliens from a dozen liberated worlds walked together, shopped together, lived together. "I have been offered a position with the Galactic Liberation Council," he said finally. "It seems that my experience with Imperial conquest is valuable for identifying other oppressive regimes." "Poacher turned gamekeeper? I am not familiar with that expression." Sarah grinned. "It means someone who used to break the rules now helps enforce them. It's actually quite common in human culture." Zorthak considered this. "Your species has a remarkable capacity for forgiveness. We have a remarkable capacity for learning from our mistakes and helping others learn from theirs." Through the window, they could see a massive construction project reaching toward the sky. The new Galactic Embassy complex, where representatives from 300 liberated worlds were working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. A true democracy that spanned the stars. Zorthak finished his coffee and stood to leave. "Dr. Kim, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you not afraid? Your species has made many enemies by dismantling the old order. There are civilizations that view your interference as an act of war." Sarah's smile never wavered. "Admiral, we're humans. We've been fighting wars since we discovered fire. The difference is that now we're fighting for something that matters." She gestured toward the street, where a group of children from 6 different species were playing together in the afternoon sun. "We're fighting for the right of every sentient being to choose their own destiny, and we're fighting with weapons that make traditional warfare obsolete." Zorthak nodded slowly. "Temporal displacement technology, among other things. But our most powerful weapon isn't technological, Admiral. It's the simple human belief that the universe can be better than it is, and that it's our responsibility to make it so." As the former fleet admiral walked away, Sarah turned back to the window in the bustling street beyond. Somewhere among the stars, the UES Temporal Guardian was investigating reports of another oppressive regime. Somewhere else, human diplomats were negotiating the peaceful transition of another empire from conquest to cooperation. And here on Earth, in a small cafe in Geneva, the future was being written one conversation at a time. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but For the first time in galactic history, it was also full of hope. The end.